Welcome back, and thanks for being with us on Morning Live. Now, the former investigative directorate against corruption head advocate Andrea Johnson is expected to return to the witness stand this morning at the Madlanga Commission. Now, Advocate Johnson has conceded that investigations conducted without properly verifying the supporting evidence can be problematic. Now, she further conceded that she, in fact, authorized the summonses based on briefings by investigators without personally verifying the underlying evidence. And Johnson is being probed over the arrest of crime intelligence head Lieutenant General Dumisani Khumalo and 6 others. And to weigh in on Johnson's testimony so far, we are now joined by lecturer in the Department of Political Sciences at the University of Pretoria, Roland Henwood. Roland, good to have you with us once again. Welcome to Morning Live.
Good morning. Thank you. It's always a pleasure.
So we've seen several days of testimony from Andrea Johnson before the Madlanga Commission. And what has been your assessment of her credibility so far?
I think what is interesting is that the image we and I myself had of Advocate Johnson and what we've seen at the Commission is two completely different personas. She always created the impression of somebody knowing what she's doing, she's in charge, and she's very serious about what she's supposed to do in terms of fighting organized crime and corruption. And what we see in front of the Commission is somebody that has very quickly been disarmed and in a sense trying to catch up to what the Commission is asking, what the Commission is doing, and often falling short in terms of the expectation, in terms of the answers and the explanation she's given. And to me, that's quite interesting. What happened to the person? And if I may make a comment, it's something that struck me listening to her and seeing the unraveling in a way of the very important person. What's happening at the National Prosecuting Authority? We saw a similar thing play out at the Kampepe Commission with Advocate Shamila Batoyi. Pushing charges that she was basically responsible for against one of the people working in her office. And when the Commission started probing and asking questions, she, in a sense, fell apart. And that is very worrying. I don't want to get into the legalities of this, but if we look at it from an institutional and political and governance perspective, we again understand that we are in serious trouble in South Africa. If these are the leading people that have to fight crime, protect us, prosecute people who are serious offenders, not only in criminal matters, but specifically in this context, organized crime, and where we're looking now at probing also at the political links, there's a serious challenge in terms of appointees, in terms of how you approach what you're supposed to be doing, and the effect that has on everyone in South Africa. So I'm very concerned with what is playing out at this stage.
So if you look at it, Advocate Johnson repeatedly essentially said that she relied on information that was given to her by investigators and then had to go on and concede that, in fact, some of it was patently incorrect. So how damaging is that to IDAC?
Well, it's seriously damaging because it casts aspersion on the integrity of the people, but also the process. And there are two dimensions to this. People such as the crime intelligence head and others who are being prosecuted wrongfully, it seems. So what's the motive? Is it political? Is it playing into a particular agenda? Is it a crime agenda? Is it a particular political faction that is being supported? The other issue is, what about cases that have been concluded? What's the basis of those? Are those correct? Can they stand the test of what happens in court, or is it something that has to be reviewed? And then you go back to the issue that has plagued South Africa since the disbandment of the Hawks, and that is, where are we with fighting crime? Where is the political will? Where is the backup? Where is the institutional support and capacity? And then the underlying issue in all of this, the way in which we appoint people, we have to seriously go back to that. There is a massive problem. We do not seem to get people appointed that are standing on their own, that work independently, and that are not affected in this way. There is one element, though, and that is relying on people who work for you is not in its own wrong. But my sense is procedures have not been followed, because what came out yesterday was that one person may have changed an affidavit or the status of an affidavit or elements in an affidavit without the others being involved. That is normal procedure. And that was accepted. So there's a problem with oversight, but there's also a problem with integrity, it seems, of the people who are supposed to work here. And that goes back to something we've heard repeatedly. Integrity, the question of audits, the question of security clearances. Now, of course, that is a massive problem in itself, because we know from the past that security clearances have been manipulated to suit certain interests or to hamper others. So we have a crisis of governance in South Africa. That's the only way I can describe it. And this crisis is becoming more serious and a bigger threat the more we delve into what is happening in, and I want to make it very broad, in government, because this is not an isolated issue. This seems to be standard in government.
And I just want to make a note about the political impact, but coming back to your other point about the procedural issues. Now, if you look at Johnson conceding that if the Section 27 referral affidavits and the Section 28 summonses actually lacked evidential or legal basis, then the entire fraud case against General Khumalo and Brigadier Mokwele, among others, falls away. And let's talk to that, because again, how do you get to that point as IDAC? And that with charging such high-ranking police officials. How does this happen?
Well, that's the issue. I mean, we have now heard yesterday that the cases are being reviewed and withdrawn. So in essence, there isn't a case. But this was a very important high-profile case. This is one of the key issues that drove General Mkhwanazi to make his public statement. So the stakes are extremely high. And the question is, if you're dealing with such a case, don't you make sure all the T's are crossed and all the I's are dotted, and you are very specific in terms of procedural and legal requirements? The impression one gets, and I don't want to prejudge, but the impression one gets is this was kind of a just let's go with the flow, normal kind of thing, and it's serious, but we prosecute. So what's the agenda behind this? And I'm not implicating or implying Advocate Johnson has an agenda. But it is clear that somewhere in this process, it seems that somebody was pushing a particular argument or line or interest. And she became victim to that because she did not check the details. She trusted the people, and it seems that some of those people abused the process.
Should she have known, though, in terms of due diligence, should she have asked more questions? And again, considering the high profile of someone like the head of crime intelligence, surely she had a moral duty and obligation, if nothing else, to make sure that she asked more questions.
I think she had a functional duty. And the issue is not only her in terms of her position, but where is the managerial and oversight processes in that institution? Clearly, this cannot be a one-on-one decision. So there must be some institutional process, there must be some oversight. Where are the checks and balances that are required in all these cases and all institutions that function in this way? And that is why I say I'm worried about the general state of governance, because this is something we see fairly happening more or less regularly or as a natural occurrence, that you don't see the oversight, you don't see the checks and balances, you see decisions being taken, it seems, in a very, easily and fast-tracked often, without necessarily not only checking the details, but due consideration to the consequences.
So you have the now former head of IDAC literally admitting and acknowledging significant factual errors under oath. Now, how severely does this unraveling that we've seen, starting with other officials from IDAC and now the former head. How significant is this unraveling, and how damaging is it to the state's broader anti-corruption agenda, particularly when you're tackling high-level figures within bodies like the South African Police Service?
Well, I think many of the rumors and the stories and the aspersions are now, in a sense, brought to the fore. It gives ammunition to the detractors of the institution, but it also gives leeway to those who are on the wrong side of the law, because clearly attention is now diverted and the existence and the functioning of IDAC is under pressure. The other issue here, and this is one that is not getting the attention it should, many people have warned about this, have warned about the setting and the structural provisions, the setup of IDAC, where it is situated, how it is managed, how it is staffed, saying that this is not what we need in South Africa. And what I think that now asks the question, and this is the underlying long-term issue, how serious is government really about tackling serious crime and corruption? Because we keep on repeating the cycle. We are now discrediting the key institution, and it is being discredited from the inside, in the same way that we saw previously happening to the Hawks. Clearly, we need something such as this in South Africa, but we need it to function properly, we need it to function legally, and it must protect the interests of everyone, also those who are accused. And that is something that I think sounds strange, but accused also have rights. And then what happens when you wrongly accuse? What happens with your investigative powers and your abilities to investigate and confirm before you move? There's a big gap in terms of these elements, and I want to use the word the underlying values that should inform these kinds of decisions.
And then, of course, those who are wrongly charged, that, of course, lays a basis for litigation against the state.
Well, not only litigation, it undermines the idea of fighting corruption, because the impression one gets, you are favoring people, you are fighting a battle on behalf of someone, against someone. And the unfortunate thing is, this is not new in South Africa. We saw this play out at the SSA, we saw it play out within police, we saw it play out previously in crime intelligence. So it's the old playbook that is repeating itself. And the question then is, which institution in government is working on the behalf of which faction or interest? Because clearly it's not working on behalf of the people of South Africa, and it's not working on behalf of people who are doing what they are supposed to be doing. It is a way of victimization, of disempowering people who should not be disempowered, and it's wrongfully doing that.
Wow, and just how damaging is that? Andrea Johnson spoke about the reputational damage to IDAC, but of course it goes so much deeper. But thank you so much, Roland Henwood, a lecturer in the Department of Political Sciences at the University of Pretoria, giving us his analysis about Advocate Andrea Johnson's testimony so far at the Madlanga Commission. Quick break, and then we'll have your news at 8.